The alley reeked of trash and desperation. But that wasn't what made Lucas Carter's heart hammer. It was the girl crumpled against the brick wall, her hands trembling, eyes wide like a deer cornered by wolves. Her designer heels were snapped, her mascara streaked down her pale cheeks, and two men had just vanished around the corner after shoving her to the ground. Lucas dropped his worn backpack and knelt beside her, his voice raw with urgency. "Stay with me," he whispered, his calloused hand hovering near hers. "You're safe now. I've got you." Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Her breathing was shallow, shaky, like each inhale scraped her lungs. She flinched when Lucas touched her shoulder, but he didn't pull back. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, his voice carrying the same steady calm he used whenever his son woke up from a nightmare. "You're safe now. Just breathe with me, all right? In and out." Her mascara-lined eyes locked onto his. She didn't know whether to trust him, but something in his tone, rough, tired, but genuine, forced her to take a breath. They tried to drag me," she whispered, her lips quivering. Lucas's jaw clenched. He glanced at the corner where the men disappeared, his instincts screaming to chase them down. But he stayed planted. Right now, the girl needed him more than his anger did. He shrugged off his faded denim jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Here, you're freezing." She blinked, stunned. The jacket smelled faintly of motor oil and laundry soap, patched at the elbow. But the gesture felt heavier than any diamond necklace she'd ever worn. "You don't even know me," she murmured. Lucas gave a tired half-smile. "Doesn't matter. Nobody deserves to be left shaking in an alley." Her hands curled tighter around the fabric. For a second, her tough shell cracked, and she whispered, "Thank you." He crouched beside her, steadying her as she sat up straighter. The neon sign above them flickered, painting her face in light and shadow. He noticed the details. Expensive necklace, shoes that cost more than his rent, the kind of purse women in his neighborhood only saw in magazines. She didn't belong in alleys. She didn't belong near men like him. Yet here she was. Lucas cleared his throat. "You got someone I can call? Family? Friends?" Her eyes darted away, filling with something that looked an awful lot like shame. Number not tonight. The silence between them was sharp, broken only by the distant hum of traffic. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, fighting the urge to ask more. Instead, he offered what little he had. "Look, I know I don't look like much. I'm just a single dad trying to keep my kid fed. But I couldn't walk past you. So, until you're steady enough to walk out of here, I'll stay." She studied him like she was trying to find the catch. But all she saw was a man with tired eyes, scarred knuckles, and a heart that hadn't hardened despite life giving him every reason to. For the first time in years, Emily Hale, the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the country, felt like someone was seeing her, not her last name. And that terrified her more than the alley ever could. "Let's get you somewhere with lights," Lucas said, offering his forearm instead of grabbing her. It was a small thing, respect wrapped as patience. But Emily latched on like it was a life rope. They moved out of the alley and onto the brighter sidewalk. City noise folded around them, buses sighing, a skateboard rattling past, a street vendor arguing over nickels. Lucas guided her to the bus stop, eased her onto the bench, then jogged to a corner bodega. He returned with a styrofoam cup and a paper bag, breath clouding in the late-night chill. "It's just mint tea," he said, passing it to her. And a bagel. I asked the guy to toast it, but he gave me that face. What face? Her voice was hoarse but glinting at the edges, like she still had humor somewhere buried under shock. You really want me to use the toaster at midnight? Face, he said, shrugging. Anyway, eat. She wrapped both hands around the cup, letting the steam thaw her fingers. You didn't have to buy this. He sat at the far end of the bench, giving her space. You looked like you needed something warm more than I did. Her gaze dropped to the plastic lid. Thank you. He nodded and pulled out his phone. Sorry, 1 second. He stepped aside and dialed. Hey, Mrs. Alvarez. It's Lucas. Yeah, I'm okay. Is Ethan out? He fell asleep on the couch. Okay. Can you tuck a blanket around him? I'll be home soon. Thank you. You're a lifesaver. He listened, smiled. Yes, ma'am. I owe you empanadas. Again. When he hung up, Emily was watching him, some soft ache in her eyes. You're a dad. Ethan, he said. 8. He thinks dinosaurs are still roaming New Jersey and that carrots qualify as dessert. A ghost of a smile touched her mouth. Sounds like a philosopher. He is when he doesn't have math homework, Lucas said. He hesitated. You got anyone I should call for you? A friend you trust? Emily stared past him, into the moving blur of headlights. If I call anyone, he'll know. He who? Lucas asked gently. Her jaw tightened. Someone who thinks everything is a negotiation, even me. He didn't push. The city had 1,000 kinds of trouble. You learned which questions helped and which ones escalated danger. He slid his phone into his pocket and cracked the bodega bag open, setting the bagel between them so she could pretend she wasn't accepting charity. A black SUV turned the corner and idled at the curb across the street. Lucas felt it in his spine before he processed it. Windows too dark, engine too patient. The passenger window slid down 2 inches, then up again. Emily set the tea down with a tiny clink. That's them. Those guys from the alley? He asked. Worse, she whispered. They'll call it security. They'll call it for my own good. But they drag first and ask later. Lucas stood. He wasn't big. He was sturdy in the way of men who've done every kind of heavy lift, except the ones that pay. He stepped in front of the bench, shoulders squared, then raised his phone and hit video. The red dot glowed like a warning light. The SUV eased forward. The driver cracked his window. Evening, a measured voice said. We're here for Ms. Hale. Emily flinched at her last name landing in the open air. Lucas didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the car. She says she's not going with you. Sir, the driver said, polite as sharpened steel. Her father is concerned. She's an adult, Lucas replied, steady, and she said no. The rear door opened. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out, the kind of guy who could vanish into any boardroom. Ms. Hale, he said, ignoring Lucas entirely. You're needed at home. Needed, she repeated, the word tasting bitter. No. Ma'am, this is a family matter. Then why does it feel like a transaction? Emily rose, inching closer to Lucas without seeming to. Tell my father I'll speak to him when I'm ready. The suited man glanced at the glowing red dot on Lucas's phone and the small cluster of bystanders who'd started to hover. 2 teenagers with vape pens, a dog walker, a woman filming from across the street. Image mattered to people like the Hales. This wasn't an alley anymore. The man's smile thinned. We'll be nearby, he said, nodding to the driver. The SUV rolled away, merging into traffic like a shark slipping beneath waves. Lucas kept filming until the tail lights vanished. Then he stopped and exhaled. like he'd been holding his breath since the moment they sat down. "Are they gone?" Emily asked. "For now," he said. "You okay?" She nodded, but her hands shook again. He crouched to eye level. "Hey, in, outside. Count 4 with me." He breathed with her. 4 inches, 4 out. No lecture, no commentary. Just presence. After a minute, her shoulders loosened. "I hate that they called me Ms. Hale like it's a leash." "Hale," he repeated for the first time, quietly connecting the dots. The Hale Tower logos stamped across construction fences. The condos that had pushed families from his block. The logistics contract that evaporated the same month his warehouse closed. He wasn't stupid. He recognized the weight of the name. He also recognized the way her chin trembled, and decided kind was more important than right. "You want to tell me your first name?" he asked. "Emily." She swallowed. "Emily Claire." "Nice to meet you, Emily Claire," he said, as if they weren't standing on a sidewalk after almost being abducted by privilege. "I'm Lucas Carter. We already met my jacket." She looked down at the denim around her shoulders and laughed despite herself. It broke into a hiccup halfway through, then steadied. "I can't go home." "Then you don't," he said. "Tonight we make a better plan." She blinked. "We? That okay?" He gestured across the street. "There's a diner. Windows, people, coffee that tastes like burnt hope. It's safer, and they won't mind if we sit too long." Inside the West End diner, fluorescent light washed every booth the same exhausted yellow. A waitress slid them menus without judgment. The cook flipped pancakes no one ordered. Lucas chose a corner booth with a full view of the door. Emily sat opposite, back to the wall, eyes still scanning. He ordered tomato soup for her and black coffee for himself. When the waitress left, Emily spoke to the condensation on her water glass. "He wants me to sign something," she said. "It's an agreement." "It always is." "I refused tonight, and he sent his concern after me." "What kind of agreement?" Lucas asked. "The kind that trades silence for obedience," she said. "He calls it protection. I call it a gag." She lifted her eyes to his. "I ran out the service entrance. 2 men came after me. You saw the rest." Lucas sat with that. He could smell the soup before it arrived, bright and sharp, like something that could actually heal. "I got laid off when his company bought the warehouse that paid my rent," he said after a beat, not as accusation, but as context. "I could be mad at the name on your mail. But that's not you. And I have a kid who watches who I am when no one's watching. So, I choose the person in front of me." Her throat worked. "You don't want anything from me?" "Respectfully, a bite of that soup? It smells ridiculous," he said, lightening it just enough. Then, softer, "No, I don't." The waitress set down the soup and a plate of crackers. Emily passed him the spoon first. He took 1 spoonful, made a reverent face, and handed it back. She laughed, this time fully, as if the sound surprised her. He glanced at the clock. "I can't bring you to my place. Ethan's there, and I don't introduce strangers to my kids' sleep. But my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, she's older, runs the church pantry. She keeps a spare room for women who need a night without questions. It's a thing she does. I can ask." Emily's hand flew to her mouth, covering a new wave of emotion. "I don't know how to accept that kind of kindness. You say thank you, then you sleep, then you wake up and decide what to do with the day you just bought," he said. "Tomorrow, if you want, I'll go with you, not inside, not into your family's house. But I'll stand outside to make sure you walk in on your own terms and walk out the same way." She held his gaze. In it, she saw a cheap wristwatch with a kid's fingerprints on the face, a man who carried tired like a second skin, and a moral spine that didn't bend for money. "Okay," she whispered. "Call her." He dialed. "Mrs. Alvarez, it's me again. I have a situation. A young woman needs a safe place tonight." "Yes, just one night. I'll bring her and leave, I promise." "Thank you. I owe you 24 empanadas." He hung up and looked at Emily. "You've got a bed, a lock, and a woman who will guard your story like it's sacred." Emily wiped her cheeks. "Lucas, my last name isn't just heavy, it's dangerous. If you get dragged into this—" "I already got dragged into this," he said, smiling gently. "But I walked in on purpose." Outside, the black SUV ghosted past the diner window and continued without slowing, the occupants clocking faces, calculating risk. Inside, a tired single dad and a billionaire's daughter split the last cracker and mapped a boundary. Her life would not be bought, and his kindness would not be leveraged. When they stood to leave, Emily slid out of the booth with a steadier spine. "Tomorrow," she said, testing the word like a door she'd just unlocked. "I'm going to tell my father something he's never heard from me." "What's that?" Lucas asked, holding the door. "No," she said, "and I'll make it stick." Lucas held the door as if it were a shield. "Then let's get you someplace safe so you can get to tomorrow." They stepped into the night together, not rich and poor, not rescuer and rescued. Just two people choosing, deliberately, to be braver than the systems trying to script them. The cab of Lucas's old pickup rattled as it rolled down the quiet street toward Mrs. Alvarez's house. Emily sat curled against the passenger door, the denim jacket still around her shoulders, her eyes flicking to every pair of headlights they passed. Lucas kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other drumming nervously against his thigh. "You don't have to be afraid right now," he said quietly. "They're not following us. I checked 3 times. She swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "That's the problem. They always find me." Lucas glanced at her. The streetlight lit the side of her face, perfectly sculpted, but with exhaustion carved deeper than makeup could hide. He wanted to tell her she'd be okay, but he wasn't the type to make promises he couldn't keep. "You're safe tonight," he said instead. "One night. That's all we need to figure out the next move." The truck groaned to a stop in front of a small, 2-story house with flower boxes under the windows. The porch light clicked on before they even reached the steps. Mrs. Alvarez, gray hair in a bun, warm eyes, sharper than most detectives, opened the door with a blanket draped over her arm. "Lucas," she said, her voice both scolding and kind, "you keep bringing strays. One day, the world's going to bring you back more trouble than you can carry." He smiled faintly. "I'll take my chances." Emily froze at the doorway, uncertain, until Mrs. Alvarez wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. "Mija, come in. You don't have to explain anything. Just rest." Emily's throat tightened. No contracts, no conditions, just kindness. It felt foreign. Lucas turned to go, but Emily caught his sleeve. "Wait, will you come back tomorrow?" He hesitated. "If you want me to." Her grip loosened, but her eyes didn't. "Please." Lucas nodded, giving her the faintest smile. "Tomorrow, then." That night, Lucas sat on the edge of his son's bed, watching Ethan sleep. He should have been relieved that the chaos was over. But instead, his chest burned with something else. Protectiveness. Not just for Ethan, but for the girl with billionaire blood who looked more lost than anyone he'd ever met. The next morning, he returned to Mrs. Alvarez's. Emily was waiting on the porch, hair pulled back, determination replacing the fear in her eyes. "Lucas, she said firmly. I'm not running anymore. Today, I'm going to look my father in the eye and tell him no. Lucas folded his arms, steady as stone. Then I'll stand outside and make sure no one drags you back in. She stared at him, her lips parting slightly as if she wanted to say more. Instead, she whispered, "You don't even know what this means to me." He tilted his head. "I don't need to know. I just need to know you're not alone." And for the first time in her life, Emily Hale, the billionaire's daughter, felt like she had someone in her corner who couldn't be bought, silenced, or scared away. And that changed everything.